Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan AGAJAINIan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping here in the Hollywood Museum in the historic Max Factor building, and waiting to be profiled are director Jennifer Chambers and designer Karolyn Kiisel. Actress, director Jennifer Chambers was born and raised in New Jersey, graduated in theater arts from Northwestern University, and earned a master's in psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies. Her acting has taken her to many stages, including Broadway, and you've directed plays in California theaters, adult autobiographies, but you've also directed children's theater in Piedmont,
Yes.
Piedmont, California, Northern California. Tell us the difference between children's theater and adult theater, or is there a difference?
There is, in the sense of most of the children's theater that I've done, the kids are pretty little, so there is a lot of more of wrangling of bodies and a lot more play with improvisation. You know, you don't always get to craft the moments as specifically as you do with adults, but you have a lot more surprise moments that end up being
Can
really
you direct them, actually? Can you actually direct them?
You can. I think I started at Piedmont assisting the director of Piedmont Children's Theater, Randy McCummins, and I think with 2 people, it actually helps a lot because you sort of have one that looks at all of the physical stuff and then one that really looks at the emotional and the through line of the story. And
what age group are we talking about?
our youngest group, I want to say, was 6 and 7, and then our oldest were like 11 and 12.
You know, they take a lot of children from the stage to movies. Is it easy? It's probably easier filming them because they can refilm and refilm.
Yeah, I think so. I think if anything, just the focus for that age group is difficult.
And then can you tell if one of those children is like ready to be a stage person or an actress or actor?
No, but I think, you know, even in some of the adult productions I've done, the last 2, I've had we have a 7-year-old girl in this one.
In the Pain and the Itch. I was going to ask you about that. So because that's why the working with children's theater really works into what you're doing now, I guess.
It does, yeah. And we had a 9-year-old girl in Complete, which I just directed at The Matrix. So.
Oh, you did?
So you see like how they can follow directions, and then once they get sort of the ground plan down, how innovative they can be in their role. And yeah, I definitely see a difference in some kids that are more.
Yeah, is that how you cast them? Do you give them directions?
I do. I do, not with the script. Well, with Complete, I gave them the script because they had a lot of dialogue that they had to say.
That was the other play. And did they remember it all?
They did, yeah. But with Pain and the Itch, because she actually doesn't have any lines, we played tag a lot.
I see.
And I would give them like one specific thing to do while they were playing tag.
And you have 2 or 3 people playing the same role?
We have 2 little girls playing the same role.
Okay, let's go back. So we're talking children's theater. You've also directed autobiographical pieces, which means someone's written a play about themselves and then you help them direct it.
Yes.
Because one of the directors who's really great at that is Jules Aaron, because he's done a lot of that. So is there a specific or a special thing you have to do with this?
Well, I think you have to create a really specific relationship of trust with the person that you're working with because they are bearing really personal, intimate things about themselves.
Right.
So they really need to trust you that you'll receive it and look at it in a theatrical way. So I think my graduate training really helped
I was going to ask you, does the psychology and because you took a lot of psychology courses and you majored in that, so that does help you?
It does, yeah, because also when you get trained as a therapist, you sort of learn to listen for what the important storylines are, and that translates really well into theater and what a person's important storyline is in the story that they're trying to tell on stage.
And you've written autobiographical pieces,
yeah.
2 of them?
2, yes.
How could you do 2? I mean, are they
They're about
specifically?
very different things. The first one I did at the Marsh Theater in San Francisco was part of a class, and it was more of a telling a specific story about a very brief time in my life.
So it was specific. And then the other one?
Was my graduate thesis for my master's degree, and that one was a little bit more deeper and personal and had a lot more physical and dance elements to it, music and improvisation.
So then how did you pick a director?
Well,
you couldn't direct yourself, could you?
No, I would never direct myself. I went through people that I had trusted. I had seen the director that directed my last one had done a couple other colleagues and friends' pieces that I really loved his style.
Was it up north?
It was up north, yeah. That was all up north. I haven't done one here.
And so his style, what would the style be?
He was very empathetic and he was very warm, but he also had a really great theatrical eye, and he had a great way of using specific kinds of storytelling and theatrical devices that I really responded to.
So what is that? Lighting, moving?
Movement, music.
Music.
The way that we sort of mined for material was a lot of improvisation. Physical improvisation. So I really responded to that a lot.
You took some classes at NYU, right?
I did.
And did you go right to the theater in New York from those classes?
No, well, at NYU, I began my graduate degree at NYU in drama therapy. I had already gotten an undergraduate degree in theater from Northwestern.
But then did you act in New York?
I did, prior to graduate school.
Oh,
Yes.
prior to that. Oh, what were you doing?
I did a lot of regional theater, a bit of off-Broadway. My very first job out of school I was an acting intern for the National Actors Theater, which was Tony Randall's theater.
Yes, he was very involved, wasn't he?
Yeah, and so he was my boss for a year, and I got to do 2 Broadway plays.
You did with his group?
With his company, yeah. Yeah, so that was amazing and a huge lesson in theater history.
Oh, yeah, I guess you do. So we have children's theater. We have directing autobiographical. Then we have Bruce Norris's new play, The Pain and the Itch.
Yes.
Is he a Pulitzer?
He's Pulitzer. He won the Pulitzer in 2011 for Clybourne Park.
He's a brilliant writer. What else has he written besides The Pain and the Itch?
He wrote Clybourne Park, which he won the Pulitzer for.
Which played here and then went to Broadway.
Went to Broadway. He did a parallelogram, which was just at the Taper.
That was fabulous too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The Mark Taper did that.
And he's got a new one that's just about to open, if it has not opened yet, at Lincoln Center. That I can't remember the name of.
Oh, it is. So did you see Parallelogram and Clybourne Park?
I saw Parallelogram. I read Clybourne Park, but I didn't get a chance to see it.
Because it's very personal. It looks really nice on the outside. Everyone's getting along. And then all of a sudden it just really falls apart.
Yes.
What happens in The Pain and the Itch?
There's that.
Tell us the story, first of all.
It takes place on Thanksgiving Day in
he loves those kind of things, doesn't he?
Well, those are good fodder for family.
It's kind of like Tracy Letts in a way.
Very much. Actually, Tracy Letts originated one of the roles in The Pain and the Itch as an actor.
Oh, he did? I always forgot that he was an actor because he's such a great writer.
Yeah.
And does Bruce act too?
He did. That's what I hear. Yes, he did. But now I think he mostly writes.
Okay, so it takes place on Thanksgiving
Day. A young-ish couple and their 2 young children are hosting Thanksgiving, and the husband's mother is there, and his brother and his much younger girlfriend come over for Thanksgiving. And
the brother and his girlfriend.
And it alternates between that and a day 2 months later in January.
So how do you change the sets?
We mostly use lighting. The set is exactly the same because it's the same location, but we have an incredible lighting and sound designer.
And the theater, it's at the Zephyr Theater, and that actually the audience is right up on
Right
top
there.
of the stage,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah, we really did want the audience to feel like they were a part of the home, and so
And it curves around.
it curves
the stage.
around. Yep, and the home takes up. We've built this beautiful Pacific Palisades wood-inspired living room.
Why does it take place in Pacific Palisades? He's from Chicago,
He was from
right?
Chicago. In the play, he specifies that it just takes place in an urban city. So I really wanted to put it in Los Angeles.
So you changed it.
Yeah.
And that's your prerogative to do something. Oh, so it's Pacific in your backyard.
In my backyard. Yeah. I always like to do what I know.
So you knew it, right?
Yeah.
And then what about costumes?
Costumes, we have a great costume designer, Shannon, whose last name is escaping me right now. But she's really made them very contemporary. You know, the play takes place in 2006.
Oh, so it's really something that we could have gone to, could have been a part of.
Absolutely.
And the music and the lighting?
Slow. I should probably learn my designers' last names because I've been calling. Rick Zimmerman is our lighting designer.
Rick.
And Joseph Slavoski is our sound designer, but we just call him Slow.
So what does a sound designer do?
He crafts, well, there's a couple things. He really crafts the container for the whole show, does a lot of the music for the top of the show, what's playing within the living room end of the show.
Oh, is that right?
But he also there's some really very specific kind of key sound effects that happen within the show.
So he designs all that. And then does the lighting person work with him?
Yeah, they all work together as a team. And they worked really nicely. It was great to work with them.
So here was Bruce. He was from Chicago and New York. His plays have been everywhere. How does that affect you as a director?
Well, you know,
his background.
Well, I spent my formative theater years in Chicago.
So you knew the theaters.
I knew. I mean, yeah. It's that the world that he comes from is one that I'm extremely familiar with.
And it's fabulous. The Chicago theater, isn't it?
Always what's inspired me, and it's
Steppenwolf.
Yeah, always the kind of theater that I've wanted to do. And then I spent most of my artistic career until I moved here in New York. So, and that's where I'm from.
One of the things with Norris's work is the layers, right?
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
I think you just have to I deal with it head on. You know, I mean, you look at the personal first and you craft the relationships, and then you kind of see the huge metaphors that he's giving you.
So he gives you room to move? Do
I
you
think
call
so.
him? Do you talk to him?
No, never
Does
called
he
him.
come out?
Nope.
So you're all on your own?
All on my own. There are some days I wish I could call him.
So you have your own children.
I do have two.
Little children.
Little.
Are they interested in theater?
Well, my daughter has just discovered The Wizard of Oz.
So how old is she?
She's 4.
Oh, perfect.
So we sing all of the parts.
Okay.
Yeah, but they've never seen a play yet. They've come to my theaters when I've been working, but not
just to
be there, and they've
yeah.
seen the set being built and things.
But that takes me to the question: having the 2 little kids and working with little kids, does that also teach you patience?
I think it has to. Yeah, I also have a very protective, mother vibe with the kids that I work with, and I do.
With the kids.
And I think as a director, I mean, you kind of have to. I feel like you kind of have to have that vibe. You're sort of the leader of the pack in that sense. And
well, they say don't work with children or animals,
I
but
know.
there you are.
I'm okay with the children. I probably don't work with animals.
And with that, we'll say goodbye.
Okay.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching. That part of our show. We'll be right back with fashion designer Karolyn Kiisel. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping at the Hollywood Museum in Hollywood, and I have fashion designer, author Karolyn Kiisel with me. She was born in Indiana, but came west as a child because her father had a job at the Disney Studios. She's taught fashion at Otis College of Art and Design and Woodbury University. And she works on her Bon Bon Pink, is that right, line?
Yes.
And has written a book about draping. And Karolyn graduated from UC Berkeley. So tell us, what is draping? Because you wrote a whole book on draping.
Right. Well, draping is the essential fashion designer's skill of creating a design directly on a mannequin or dress form or even a person. So it is considered the more sculptural, creative way to make a pattern and a design, as opposed to the sort of flat drafting, technical, mathematical method.
Well, which is better? Is there one better than the other?
Well, of course, since I wrote the book on draping, I feel like draping is better, but it's kind of
does everyone have to drape? Do you have to drape first before you can make a design?
Well, it's kind of a left brain, right brain thing. If you are more mathematically inclined, you would tend to do by measurement and computer. But of course, all the great couturiers draped their designs, and you see pictures of Yves Saint Laurent with his silk or Valentino, and they've got their fabrics and they're experimenting with their fabrics and draping it on the form or the.
So where does it? Does it come from a drawing first, or is it just in their head?
Not necessarily. You know, I have one chapter in the book called improvisational draping, where you maybe just think of an emotion or something that you want to communicate, and then you just start with your fabric and you start pinning and clipping and creating some sort of a shape. And I always maintain that it's a much easier way for students to begin creating clothes because they can kind of see what they're making as they go along. Whereas with drafting, you have to kind of draft the pattern, make the paper, cut it out, sew it up, and then you see what you've got. But with draping, you're actually pinning and clipping and shaping.
You have a picture in the book of Rihanna with lots of fabric on her doing draping.
Right.
And what kind of fabric is that?
Well, we drape with muslin, with cotton muslin, and I brought a piece here to show you, which is our kind of our medium as designers. It's a cotton muslin, and we drape with this. It's heavy, but it has a stable grain line. It's inexpensive, and we think of it like paper. We cut it and pin it and tape it and wrap it and use this as our sort of artist medium.
Oh, I see.
With the idea that then, after we make the pattern on the form, then it gets translated into the actual fabric, which sometimes has a very different drape.
Yes, this is very soft and flowy. And
so it's part of the designer's skill.
And what kind of fabric is this?
This is a 4-ply silk crepe. So it's part of the designer's skill that we sort of understand that as we're draping with muslin, you know, that it's going to be much more beautiful when we cut the actual garment in the 4-ply crepe.
And it would be more expensive to use this, right?
Right.
But this is going to hang a different way than the muslin, isn't it? Because it's softer. So how do you deal with that?
That's part of the designer's skill, just sort of knowing that difference. And of course, the more expensive houses, like I'm sure the couture houses in Europe, or the more expensive evening wear houses, sometimes those designers would drape in the actual fabrics if they have it on hand. Sure.
You have a picture of chiffon. I'm sorry, with chiffon or silk or.
Yes, in one of the chapters I'm draping on the bias, and I'm actually draping with this fabric because with a really soft, sort of languid look, you do need to use a softer fabric. So.
You have a picture of Audrey Hepburn in the book, too.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Well, one of the unique aspects of my book is that I'm not just teaching the technical, okay, now we're doing collars, now we're doing sleeves, but I've chosen images from pop culture and modern designers and draping those clothes. So we drape the toga from Diana Versailles, and we drape Audrey Hepburn's iconic neck. Yes.
You teach how to drape those things, so they're in the book, and that's why I see.
I see. 550 step-by-step photographs.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. And you know 550 ways of draping?
Well, let me tell you, it took a lot longer than I thought it would.
How long did it take?
Well, I was commissioned by Lawrence King, who's a wonderful publisher out of London, about 3 years ago. And then by the time I kind of put together my proposal and the plan, found a photographer, and then I rented this giant studio downtown because we needed a huge place to, you know, do the work. So it's been about a 3-year process.
So why did you write it? Why did you decide to write a book on draping? Is it a textbook?
I ask myself that sometimes. It's a textbook for fashion students and also a reference book for any designer or costume designer to just look up and see, okay, here's how I do a kimono sleeve, or here's how I do a certain kind of a collar or a certain kind of a drape.
Aren't there books like that?
Also, I'm a fashion educator. I've taught for over 25 years. And so my belief is that this is the easiest way to teach students how to make clothes.
So you said every design doesn't have to start with draping. It does not.
Often, right, usually one would sketch first and then work from a sketch.
And you design costumes. You've designed costumes. You've designed a line of accessories and sportswear, etc., right? is there a difference between costume designing and a line that people would wear?
Oh, sure.
Yes?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I'm teaching my students now with this Woodbury Burbank Philharmonic project is that they're learning to be fashion designers, but with this project, they're actually having to design a costume that's going to be on stage. So there are many different things to consider: what it looks like from a distance, how the colors are going to react with the stage set, the curtains on the stage, how it's going to move.
Well, you've designed costumes yourself for the
Right.
Master Chorale.
Right.
And how did you do that? Same idea? Because the Master Chorale sings all in different locations, in different places.
Well, their home is Disney Hall, so
Oh,
I
it
did
is their
sort
home.
of, yeah, sort of consider that to begin
So you
with.
have light wood.
Right, right. So then I chose golden crystals instead of silver.
Oh,
To
is
go with
that the
golden
difference?
wood,
I
or-
see. But they're black.
They're black, yeah, yeah. But I've also designed costumes for operas and other plays and theater things, and you always have to consider what the needs are of the performers, of course, and the different sets, you know, working with set designers. and all
So the
that.
Burbank Philharmonic is doing a concert, and they've come to Woodbury College, or the two
Right.
of you have worked together, which is a great idea, I think.
Yeah.
And so you work with the musicians.
Well, they first came to us just at about the time that our president had said, we want you to do more community involvement projects.
great, yeah.
And so we just jumped on it and thought, perfect. And so we chose 7 students to work with 7 performers.
7 performers, wow. I know Danielle Bellin
Yeah.
is one. She's a
And
violinist.
she's getting 2 dresses.
Oh, because is she performing twice?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you have to think about her arm movements, her
Right.
neck. I mean,
Right, and surprisingly, the violinists, they do want strapless. They
I know
want their
why.
shoulders to be, because
Oh,
it
to
seems like
show?
strapless usually is less comfortable for a lot of movement, but they all wanted, you know, their shoulders to be free. So the students had to consider that, and then I think we did do 2 that are sort of asymmetrical. So we have one bare shoulder and then one, you know,
and then are there men involved?
no men.
No men, all women.
no,
So
all
what are the
women.
other performers?
They're all wearing tuxedos in black and white.
And then what do the other women wear? What do they play? Are they all
Well,
violinists?
I think we've got 2 violinists, a cellist,
Oh, so
which
that
has
would
her
be,
own challenges, right?
yeah. So
Big skirt, you know, kind of. And then of course the student had designed all these elaborate bodices, and then the performer
because
came.
that shows, right?
But well, then the performer came, and it's like, well, no, actually, that is not going to even show because she holds her cello right in front of her. So then the attention kind of went to the big skirt rather than an elaborate bodice. So
It's a
kind of-
wonderful learning experience,
Oh,
isn't
yeah.
it?
It's
And then
amazing
you go
for
into
them.
the venue. I don't know where they're playing. Where are they playing?
At the Ambassador Auditorium
Oh,
in
right.
Pasadena.
At the Ambassador. So you have a stage that's set, and you have a curtain that's there,
Right.
right?
It's a pretty amazing venue. Have you seen it?
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's very ostentatious.
Right.
And
And big.
Royal and big. Yeah.
Royal.
purple
Royal.
carpet.
So how do
and
you work with that?
lime green seats, and you know, it's pretty
It's
wild.
great. I
It's
love
wild.
it. Yeah.
Well, so we did have to go through a lot of work sort of figuring out the colors, and we came up with kind of a jewel tone palette.
I see.
that I
So
think
they'll
will
all
be
be different?
fine.
All the dresses are
Yeah,
different?
we've got a red and a fuchsia and a sort of a bright blue and, you know.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Aubergine, yeah, so.
Fabulous. And then what about body types? They must all
Well,
be different too.
of course, that's a big challenge for the students too, because up till now they've been working with just models,
Or
fit models,
yeah.
in dress forms. So I think it's, and we're doing the whole elaborate building foundations with boning and grosgrain ribbon and, you know, the whole support mechanism, and then building the underskirts with the horsehair and the tulle. And so they've got to create these foundations that have very specific fit. So they're going crazy.
But that would really roll over into opera and
sure.
theater and
Yeah.
stage for them.
Oh, it's giving them such a good background. And it's also, interestingly, a lot of them, this is their senior year, so they're going into their big collection graduation groups. And, of course, they all want to design evening wear. That's the glamour.
Right, I know.
That's the glamour thing.
But I think this is better.
But now, after doing this project, I think a lot of them have gone off the idea of evening.
Yeah.
Because it's hard.
And this
It's
is-
really hard.
Evening is hard or theater is hard?
They're both hard.
They're both
They're both hard. So I think maybe now they're back to sportswear.
Oh, that's what you do. Your father worked at Disney. Was that an influence on you in any way?
Well, I don't really know. It's hard to say. My uncle was the original voice of Donald Duck,
Oh.
Clarence Nash, and so married to my mother's sister. And so when we moved back out to California, a lot of my relatives worked for Disney all our lives.
Oh,
So
it's
we
kind of
always
family.
around that. And I grew up, you know, right here in LA, going to Sunset Boulevard when I was a teenager, hanging out. And so it's always been, I don't know, kind of a child of Hollywood background, I guess.
Is there sewing in your family? Does your mother sew?
My mother made all our clothes. It was a family of 4 girls, and my mother, we have little matching Easter outfits every year.
And she made them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, that's what it
So it
is. You
came
have the
from
fingers
that.
of your mom.
Yeah.
So you have a loft. You said you have a loft, and you use that for workshops and for
Right.
parties?
Right. I have a wonderful big space downtown that I originally leased for the book.
Right.
And it's 4,500 square feet. It's massive.
Wow.
And it's right down on Los Angeles Street where all this gentrification is going on. And so I was really lucky to find such a big raw space because most of the spaces downtown are all, you know, built up and loft, modern kitchens. So anyway, after the book was done, I put it out there to rent out for parties and events. So I do filming once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some USC film students coming this weekend to do a short, and I do parties. And then also I have a partner, and we do whiskey poetry salons.
Oh, that's cool.
So every couple of months we do, we invite poets. Well, actually we invite 35 to 40 people as our cap. And we have a whiskey ambassador who comes, and we do
So
whiskey
do you work
tastings.
with the bars downtown? Because there's a lot of that.
Well, no, this fellow, Johnny Mundell, he's a whiskey ambassador, so he
Oh.
works with the bar.
He
Ambassador
works
is
with
what
the
they call
bar.
it now,
Oh, I
right?
got it. Oh.
And so then he comes to our loft and brings the whiskey, and we taste, and people read poetry. The price of admission is bring your own poem.
Bring your own poem. That's great.
But it doesn't have to even be your own poem. You just have to read a poem. So
Do you have any of your line, the line that you design around so that people know that you're a designer, or no?
Sometimes the studio is always kind of evolving, and right now I have a couple of young designers who I've kind of rented space to, who are creating their own line. So it's a very busy kind of mobile environment, and we all have our lines, and then we have an area set aside for photo shoots where we all do our photo shoots.
Oh, that's
and
fabulous, isn't it?
receptions and yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. One thing before we leave, we've talked about draping and what you've taught the students and how they have to start drawing. Do they have to sew their own garments, or can they have someone else do that?
Well, they do have to sew. It's always been considered the type of thing where if you're going to be a carpenter, an architect, you have to know what the qualities of wood are. You have to know how to hammer and nails and handle tools. We do have a wonderful sample maker who comes in and helps with some of the tricky things, and she's helping us a little bit with these. She'll help us put in the linings or do a tricky zipper, but they're doing it themselves.
But
sure.
it's not, to be a designer, you have to be able to sew. That's what I'm trying to get at. Because I wonder if some of the couture designers really know how to sew, or they just know how to drape, like your book says, or draw a picture and you come in and do the design.
You know, I think it kind of runs the gamut, and a lot of students will come in saying, "I'm not going to do the sewing. I'm just going to do the sketching."
Right.
And the reality is those jobs are hard to get. I mean, maybe if you're Phoebe Philo and you get a job with Dior, they have their whole team set up, and maybe then you just sketch. But mostly designers need to know at least what it's all about. Because if you're directing sample makers and you're directing pattern makers, you need to be able to tell them how to do it and what to do.
Well, we thank you for coming with all of your knowledge today.
Thank you,
It was
Joan.
great,
How
Karolyn.
fun.
Thanks. And
Yes.
thank you for watching. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.